So this is the Werewolf card for the Halloween Oracle deck, which stands for Exploring Wildness. I'll also be doing the Winter card in this video, which stands for the Sacredness of Pausing. So in this card we see a man with a very hairy bare chest and a kind of animal-like face, beard and long hair. He does look like he's wearing jeans and underwear. You can see a little band of underwear there, so at least he has that. It looks like he is probably howling at the moon or yelling upwards. The moon is behind him. They show the moon there, and then there's some branches that are sort of behind and in front of him. So werewolves to me kind of represent wildness, transformation, carnal or primal energies in lunar cycles. And same with the moon, I think the whole lunar cycle thing going along there, and transformation. The branches, I think the branches are just sort of like symbolizing the wildness and whatnot. The werewolf, this has to be, I like werewolves, but this card, other than the spider card, has to be one of my least favorite ones, and I think it's just the artwork. The artwork looks very 80s. It's not really how I envision what a werewolf might be like. It's not the best version I've seen of one, but this is the Halloween Oracle deck, and when you're referencing a lot of the older werewolf movies, especially like 80s and before, or even 90s too, the makeup and props for werewolves was not very good. So I can see in that light, I can see why they drew it this way. I do like what the card seems to stand for. It's exploring wildness. Like it might be time to explore your wild tendencies more, or get back to nature and your wilder side. Or do you feel like you're going through a change or a transition? Are there some sort of natural cycles you're sort of connected to? Or balancing the primal and the sort of civilized, in control type of energy? I think that's all sort of things the werewolf sort of stands for. So let's see what the book actually has to say. So it's the werewolf and exploring wildness. The little poem is: luminosity triggers it, a wild moon rises, pain and blood and fangs, fur and howling and wolfen guises. After a painful, excruciating, bone-jarring struggle against the change, the man releases to the magic. Howling unrestrained under the full moon, now the half-man, half-wolf rises up, snarling, and goes looking for blood. Yes, we all know the power of the werewolf. After the end of the European witch trials, an intense interest in the werewolf development in folklore tales and evolved into becoming the stuff of horror stories. Fairly consistently since then, the wolfman or lichen has featured regularly in tales both oral and written. Of course, during the last 100 years, there have been many hugely popular movies, including American Werewolf in London, and themes in the books such as the recent Twilight Saga series. The werewolf is a kind of shapeshifter, but one that has traditionally had little control over his wildness. In a way, an inner battle between civilization and wild animal nature fights inside the one body. The vitality, strength, and freedom of the animal versus the reason, control, and intellect of the man. Which one, though, is a dominant force? What is the healthy balance between our animal nature, one that is wild, free, and connected to nature, and our radically civilized humanness, separate from or dominant over nature? The werewolf asks us to consider the balance and delve into our own ideas of wildness, independence, and custodianship of the planet. When is the last time you spent all day outside? When is the last time you threw your head back and howled at the moon? Do you quash the vitality and curiosity of your body and mind by sitting all day in front of a computer? The werewolf challenges you to weave a balance between nature and your own nature. So yeah, I like what this has to say about balancing our nature with our control of ourselves. It's always good to have a healthy self-control that has to be balanced out with indulging your more primal forces. Primal forces don't have to be negative. They become negative when we stifle them. So by learning to work with them in healthy ways and also having self-control, we become a more balanced individual. So let's see what Winter has to say. So this is the Winter card, which stands for the Sacredness of Pausing. So in this card we see a very dried out, tattered brown maple leaf. with snow falling in front of it and probably behind it too. It seems to be in front of what is a full moon, but the moon is in front of the mountains behind it. Also, I don't know, there seems to be a sort of a transparent or frosty maple leaf, and I don't know if it's behind the maple leaf or behind the moon, but you can kind of see the outline of it up here, so I'm thinking it's behind the moon. So behind the moon there's just like a winter wonderland sort of scene. There's some snowy mountains, a still lake. I don't know if it's an icy lake or if it's just a very cold still lake. So maple leaves again, sort of, I'm Canadian, so to me they represent Canada and maple syrup. And of course, like the cold time of the year is when they start to tap the trees, I think, for the syrup. I think that, yeah. But also the dead leaf is the end of fall, or the like a transition period, but the end of the transition period when all the leaves are on the ground and we're into winter now. The moon, again, the moon cycle transition. It's a cycle. The moon is a monthly cycle, but I guess it could also represent a seasonal cycle. The snow, I guess, sort of represents, of course, cold, but also when the snow is around, it's a very quiet time. And the snow, before it gets all driven on and walked on and slushy, it's very clean. There's a very quiet, white, pristine sort of environment when the snow is falling. It's weird how it gets quiet with the snow muffles out a lot of the sounds, the background noises. This picture sort of reminds me of driving through the Rockies, and you see here, through Jasper and Banff and all through there in around November, because in around November when you're driving, like here right now, all the trees, like there's a few of the trees that are green, but most of them have turned color and are dropping leaves, but there are still leaves on the trees and there's still lots of color. So as you're driving from here into the Rockies and you get higher up into the mountains, but as you get further into the mountains, they're all change color. And then as you get a little bit further, you see that they start to drop the leaves, and then you get further up into the mountains and there's snow. And eventually you get to the higher parts of the mountains and it looks like this scene here. There's a lake in particular, I forget exactly where it is, but it's absolutely beautiful in the wintertime with the snow and everything around it. Around the Coquihalla, it's a really bad place to get stuck in the snow in wintertime, so a lot of people don't like to drive the Coquihalla in the wintertime. It's a very steep mountain pass. But around this time in November, you'll probably still have a pretty good chance of getting through all these areas, so it's a good time to go. December, January, that's when it gets pretty iffy. So I'm guessing this is sort of, winter is sort of like the time to start slowing down and have a rest, and prepare for a long lull in sort of energy. But also it's a time to recognize the still beauty of the season as well. Yes, there's a lull, but it's kind of needed. We need that lull, we need that downtime. And it's just sort of the end of the transition, a time of stillness and reflection. So let's see what the book says. So winter, which stands for the sacredness of pausing, and the little poem is, "Lightly I step, for the earth falls asleep, a lullaby to rest and pause, the soul's secret to keep." That's actually a nice poem. Death is frightening, even though, or perhaps because, it is inescapable. However, as we move into winter, we know it signals a literal and metaphorical death. In some parts of the planet, the extreme weather means snow and ice buries all life, and the ground lies fallow and still. In winter, the earth slows down and there is less light and often more wet weather. Many plants die back, many animals are less active, and traditionally it was a leaner, more difficult time for those who worked on the land for their living. Winter often brought with it the end of a life cycle, a figurative or literal death. Should the winter card appear to you, it's time to let what no longer serves you die away, where it seems natural and right to let things that have been bothering you for some time die back. Take real action to change those things. Anything that is superfluous, extra, and burdensome, release it. So the deck is all in alphabetical order, but if this deck was to be put in like more of like a storyline type of order, I would this winter card I would probably put at the end of it. It seems to be the end of this cycle of Halloween, of Samhain, of fall, and as we enter into a more mellow time. But I like the line, "It's time to let what no longer serves you die away." I like that idea, and that anything that's extra and burdensome, release it. I think that's kind of a good thing to take away from this card. So yep.